From the moment that I booted up the game and arrived at the title screen, I knew that I was going to have a really good time with this game. The combination of gentle piano music and the light blue and purple colour palette really creates a soothing and calming atmosphere that I just couldn't help but immediately soak in. It sounds weird, but it actually gave me a really warm and comforting feeling, which is in stark contrast to what most of the game is actually like. Celeste is a platformer in the same vein as games like Super Meat Boy or The Ender's Nigh, where you have to navigate from one side of a screen to the other whilst avoiding traps and obstacles. This may seem pretty straightforward at a first glance, but most of where the challenge comes from is where you're often thrown into dangerous gauntlets with little time to think and have to work out how to safely traverse them on the fly. So getting this delicate balance of challenge and fun is an absolutely crucial thing for a game like this to get right, and Celeste does a fantastic job of doing this here, maybe even the best I've ever seen in a game in recent memory. The beginning levels of the game were just enough of a challenge to test you, but not so much that first-time players will be overwhelmed by it, while later levels gradually introduce new elements that work wonderfully at continually pushing the skills ceiling higher and higher without leaving the player behind. In fact, I have to say that the overall difficulty curve for this game is balanced fantastically, and when a new gameplay mechanic was introduced, it gave me enough room to get used to how it worked before incorporating it into the rest of the game. You have your standard video game spike traps and pits to avoid, but you also encounter things like falling platforms, fire and ice hazards, and even at certain points an enemy character that chases you, forcing you to have to navigate through really complex areas really quickly. Not everything carries over to the next level. Some are levels specific to fit directly into that particular level's theme. The Haunted Hotel level, for example, is dirty and hasn't been cleaned properly in a very long time. So throughout the level there are balls of soot to avoid that float around the air and also grow on surfaces that you touch, rendering them unsafe for climbing. Another level has you battling a wind current that changes directions and strength from room to room, meaning you have to fight both against and use it to get through. You also have various power-ups that are introduced to the player at various stages of the game that both assist the player in their traversal of the level, as well as increase the challenge in creative ways. The first one that's introduced refills your double jump, and then you get ones that can shoot you in 8 different directions, and even ones that make you fly around the place. Other collectibles include strawberries, yes, as in the fruit, flying strawberries that scarper if you use a dash, cassette tapes that unlock a harder B-side version of a level, and even super secret hearts to collect that are crucial to unlocking the true ending to the game. Some of these are placed in difficult parts of an existing room or have their own room dedicated to them, which offers up its own challenge. A lot of these items I encountered accidentally as I explored through each of Celeste's brilliantly designed levels, but I ended up going out of my way on multiple occasions to try and collect as much of these items as I could, just for the fun of it. Though I do have to admit, as the game got progressively harder to navigate, collecting these items became less and less of a priority for me. That is until the game threw up a literal progression barrier and forced me to, incentivized me to go back and find the rest. But it didn't matter to me much at all, as by this point I'd honed my skills to such a fine point that I could go back to these levels that once kicked my ass and make them my bitch. In all games of this type, the controls are the most important thing to get right and the easiest thing to get wrong. Thankfully, Celeste's controls are some of the best I've played in a 2D platformer, so no risk of that happening, thank God. It's your classic easy to pick up but difficult to master scenario. Performing all the basic maneuvers is really simple, but the advanced techniques introduced much later require a lot more skill and practice to master. Of course, you have the standard jump, but you can also extend this jump with a double jump or dash. This dash mechanic is the foundation on which all others are built upon. Everything you do in this game requires you to either dash to somewhere or to something. You dash to ledges to avoid falling, you dash to walls to grab onto them, you dash into items to collect them or use them, and you dash into solid stone walls to break them. Holy shit, this lady doesn't mess around, does she? Later on, this dash mechanic is expanded to more advanced techniques like wave dashing, wall bouncing, and a ton of even more advanced techniques developed by the speedrunning community. And if you're even casually interested in speedrunning, you need to check out the GDQ runs of this game. What these people can do to this game continually blows my mind. So lastly, let's touch upon the story of this game, and don't worry, we're not going to be going into spoilers here, so it's all good. It's all good. The story begins with our main character Madeline, which in this case I've named Sarah on my save file, arriving at the foot of Mount Celeste, then immediately encountering an old woman to ask for directions, but instead of providing helpful information, she just laughs at you for trying to climb the mountain, saying that you're clearly nowhere near ready to do so. Defiantly, Madeline continues on regardless to prove not only to the old woman that she can climb the mountain, but also to herself. And that's the basic gist of the story. Celeste is the story of a girl who is embarking on a journey of self-discovery and personal growth to prove to herself and to everyone else that she can beat her mental health issues and achieve greatness by climbing a mountain. Along the way, you encounter other adorable characters who all speak in that Banjo-Kazooie style gibberish and all have their own personal reasons for being on the mountain. One particular noteworthy part is where you and another mountain climber you meet go to travel on a rickety ski lift only to have it break down midway and leave them stranded. This then causes Madeline to have a panic attack, with visual effects creeping in around the edges of the screen to amplify that feeling of anxiety further. This is then turned on its head when the other climber provides some advice to Madeline to help calm her down, with both the player and the character on screen performing the same action. Things like this do a wonderful job of putting you in the shoes of the person that you are playing as, and give you more empathy towards the emotional struggle that they are going through. It really made me root for Madeline and want to see her succeed and overcome her problems. You experience her highs, her lows, as well as moments of crisis and personal victory. It's a surprisingly personal one for a game like this. We've all likely felt at some stage faced with our own metaphorical mountain to climb, and much like Madeline, it can often feel hopeless at times. But with the right help and encouragement, and super double jumping powers I guess, you can achieve the seemingly impossible. All this wrapped up in an extremely colourful, charming, and brutally difficult platforming package, and on the top of this package is a nice little bow made from the game's soundtrack. My god, is this game's soundtrack good. It's the perfect storm of synthwave, chiptune, and piano that beautifully weaves around the game's many environments and does just as good of a job of telling the story and providing emotional weight as the text on screen does. It's as much of a character as the actual cast of characters in the game are, chiming in with the appropriate musical cue when you collect something, builds tension whenever you're faced with darkness, and fills you up with determination when you're nearing the top of the mountain, almost like the game itself is going, come on, you can do this, you got this. It's honestly a gem of a soundtrack and is up there as one of the best video game soundtracks ever made in my opinion. But all in all, Celeste is just a joy to play through. Yes, there are moments where it felt really challenging and nearly made me want to karate chop my controller into the cat, but I never once felt like the game cheated me. All the times I failed were because of something that I did and not because of broken controls or bad physics. And that continuing push to become better continually motivated me to keep playing and just enjoy the ride. I wanted to experience everything that this game had to offer, to see Madeline grow and overcome her problems, collect all those darn strawberries, finish all the bonus levels, listen to the game's soundtrack repeatedly on Spotify over and over again, oh my god. And when the journey was finally all over, just sit and reflect on what myself and Madeline had accomplished. So, is Celeste as good as they say? Hell yes.